Let's talk about this lovely lady who I am embarrassed I did not realize this case was this close to trial. If you don't know, Megan Thee Stallion is in civil litigation with a creator whose account usernames go by Grams, Gramz. And she is essentially going after Grams for a smear campaign. A smear campaign related to the whole Tory Lanez trial situation. Now, if you don't know anything about that, go read up on it. If you watch Megan's documentary, which was excellent, I watched it on the plane, that will sort of help you understand. But long story short, Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion were friends. They were out one night. He shot her in the leg. He got charged with a crime. She testified against him. He's now in prison for 10 years, and he has all along said it was some kind of conspiracy, that he didn't really do it, and she is out to get him. And during that time, and even after that time, this creator, Grams, has been on an online literal campaign against Megan Thee Stallion, trying to, damage her credibility, damage her reputation, basically say all of the things that Tory Lanez can't say because he's in prison. So he can't do these things. So she's been working with him and his dad, who's apparently he's Canadian. Also, Tory Lanez's real name is Daystar. Daystar is way cooler than Tory. No? I don't get it. But anyway, she has essentially been their mouthpiece, is what Megan claims. And she has been posting all kinds of insane shit about Megan online, and I'll tell you what that stuff is. But Megan sued her in federal court in Florida, where apparently Megan now lives in Miami. And she has sued her there. And that case is set to go to trial on November the 17th. Now, because it's federal court, we probably won't be able to see it. But I'm going to follow it because the case is actually really interesting. So Megan's on her second amended complaint, kind of the typical thing, right? You've moved to dismiss. They say, wait a minute, I'll fix it. This is the operative complaint right now, the second amended complaint. The defendant moved to dismiss it. The judge was like, get out of here now. She didn't have any grounds for that. The defendant did not file a summary judgment motion. The defendant hasn't filed much. Her lawyer quit in the middle of the summer. I think half probably because he wasn't getting paid and half because of these issues I'm about to tell you about. And she's finally gotten someone new on, but like they had a sanctions hearing and the defendant didn't even show up. So she's on the struggle bus over here. But Megan's attorneys are doing a pretty good job. So Megan's suing her for defamation per se, which is like, this would be defamatory no matter who it was about. And there's essentially three buckets. You can read the complaint on Court Listener. It's absolutely fascinating. But essentially, it's saying that Megan committed perjury in the Tory Lanez trial, that Megan is mentally incompetent, and that's not the words that she uses, and that Megan's an alcoholic. Those are the defamation claims. She also has an invasion of privacy and false light claim, which you should probably know by now is pretty similar to defamation. There's an intentional infliction of emotional distress. You should know what that is by now. There's actually a cyber stalking claim in there where Megan is asking for a permanent injunction, telling this person she can never come near her or ever like DM her or like or anything, one of her online accounts ever again. And then she's got a Florida state statute claim for promoting an altered sex depiction. So basically it's a deep fake of Megan engaged in sex acts, and apparently in Florida that is a crime. So, it's a crime, but it's also a civil violation. So she's got a claim against her for that as well. They tried to settle, it didn't work. There hasn't been a whole lot on the docket. It's a pretty small docket. I think a lot of that is because the defendant probably like isn't paying lawyers or doesn't have the money to pay. I don't know. Or maybe she's a nightmare to work with. I don't know. But there have actually been several discovery hearings. And the reason there's been several discovery hearings is because they elected to use the magistrate. Some of you may remember from the live yesterday, I was saying that whenever you file a federal court case, it gets assigned to a district judge, but you have the opportunity to say, do you want to have a magistrate help you with all of the issues before you get to trial? And a federal magistrate is somebody who is not confirmed, not appointed by the president, confirmed by a Senate. They're picked by the other judges. They have 8-year terms, and they are qualified to rule on all kinds of things leading up to trial. Discovery motions, sometimes they can even recommend to the judge on dispositive motions. And they elected to use the magistrate here. And because they did, they got stuff heard a lot quicker. Both the Lively side and the Baldoni side said they didn't want to do that in Lively Baldoni. It wasn't anybody's fault, but that's why the judge is so annoyed, because he shouldn't be having to deal with penny ante bullshit like what time is the deposition. So you can see here, this is one of the hearings they had where it's like, okay, we're going to just have a big omnibus discovery hearing. And you can do this with the magistrate. It's almost like state court where you just are like, okay, we're going to set All these things for a hearing all at the same time. This was a Zoom hearing. And the magistrate was like, okay, let's have a Zoom hearing. And they talked about AEO, they talked about depositions, they talked about deadlines, they talked about interrogatories. There was another one where they talked about requests for production. But they have not been yelling at each other the way the Lively Baldoni people have been. Although Meghan has asked for sanctions multiple times. She's gotten it once and now twice because of people who are like not responding to discovery requests at all. They took the deposition of this guy, Caesar McDonald, who I guess is another associate of Tory Lanez. And he like refused to answer any question for 7.5 hours. Are you the CEO? Maybe. Do you tell people what to do? I don't know. I'm not a dictator. Shit like that. So they have had some issues they've had to file on, but it's really only in one direction. I just wanted to show you this from the second amended complaint. I mean, this is the language they use to smear her reputation. But she knows exactly who it is, and she can tell you exactly how it was done. Meghan says in her complaint at one point that she thinks she used bots. But I don't know if she needs to show that or not. Because if you go on there and say Meghan's an alcoholic and she's committing perjury and here's a deep fake of her naked, people are going to look at it. So because they are getting ready to go to trial here pretty soon, they have already started filing jury instructions, verdict forms. There's an order on pretrial publicity that says that neither one of them can talk about this trial at all to anyone in any forum. So you're not going to hear anything from Meghan. You might hear a statement from her lawyer, but you're not going to hear it from her. But the big thing that happened last week is that Meghan had moved for sanctions against the defendant for evidence spoliation, saying, I wanted all of these text messages and information from apps that she was using, and she has deleted them. And she deleted them after we filed suit. And you can't do that. And the court cannot enter an order on sanctions on something like that without an evidentiary hearing, because that is establishing fact. So remember how I talk about in Lively Baldoni, no facts have been established? That's because we haven't had an evidentiary process yet. A court cannot find this happened, this person did this occurred, until you go through the due process that the courts require. The application of the evidence code, the ability for cross-examination, all that kind of stuff. So in this case, on this sanctions motion, they had a full evidentiary hearing. And it was mainly just Megan Thee Stallion's expert. The expert had gotten a download of Graham's phone, actually twice, and went through it as a forensic computer person. If you have never gotten the chance to do that, I've had that in a couple of cases where you get somebody's computer and have a forensic person go through it. And boy, is that a blast. Holy shit, the stuff you find. So this forensic guy found like, oh yeah, she deleted tons of stuff. So the main findings that the judge made, and remember the defendant didn't show up, and she had an expert she said was going to testify, and that person didn't show up either. So she just sort of gave it up. But the judge found that Graham's had deleted at least 2,000 text messages after the case had been filed that were directly relevant to the case. And that she had deleted the entire WhatsApp, like uninstalled it from her phone in the middle of the case, which of course deletes all the messages. And so she said, I think this is sanctionable behavior. It won't let me be smaller for some reason all of a sudden. Okay, so in federal court, this is a procedural issue, right? And you look at Federal Rule 37E, and it talks about a failure to preserve electronically stored information. And these are the findings that the judge has to make. And it can't just be this stuff is missing. It has to be that they either knew and did it on purpose, or they had reckless disregard for it. And that, look at two, they acted with the intent to deprive the other party of the information. You have to have bad faith, and you have to show that information missing prejudices the other party in trial. So you can't just say, oh, they did it, let's sanction them. But the biggest win that Meghan got is this jury instruction that's going to be given to the jury at the trial. It's called an adverse inference instruction. And it's where the judge will instruct the jury when he's giving all those instructions. Actually, it's a she. When she's instructing the jury, these messages are missing. The defendant did this on purpose. The defendant did this for the purpose of depriving the plaintiff of the messages. And this is the big one. You, jury, can presume because they were deleted that they would have been bad for the defendant. You can hold that against her that they're missing. And so that's going to be a huge, huge issue. If they do go to trial, that'll be huge on Meghan's side.